We'll see how this goes. This is my first online review for anything. And we're going to start with a big one. We're going to start with Batman vs Superman. Possibly one of the biggest films of the year so far, and definitely one that's polarised the fans and the critics more than perhaps any other film in recent history. It's one of those films that you either seem to hate it or you love it. Personally, I thought it was okay. It's an okay film. It definitely had its problems. To be honest, it wasn't one of Zack Snyder's greatest films. He is a brilliant director when it comes to visuals and action, definitely. But it had problems editing. The script wasn't perfect by any means. It did have some things going for it. I mean, it was very, very hugely hyped by Warner Brothers leading into its release, and it did 422 million on its opening weekend, which is the biggest opening weekend for a superhero film ever, and the fourth biggest for Warner Brothers of all time. So, good start. But the problem is it almost immediately started going downhill. The critics that had seen it panned it almost straight away, straight off the bat. Obviously, word of mouth wasn't that great because, unfortunately, it set another record. The record for the biggest Friday to Sunday drop for a superhero film, with 58% decline from its Friday opening to the Sunday. And that's a record previously only held by the recent Fantastic Four film. Less said about that, the better, but that shows you how bad that was. It set another record the next weekend. The second weekend was a historic drop of 81.2%, one of the biggest Friday to Friday drops of any blockbuster ever seen. Despite it didn't really have any competition at the box office. It really didn't. I mean, there were a few other films hanging around from the week before, but there was nothing huge, no other big openings, so there really wasn't any other reason why it wouldn't have held on and done another good weekend, other than the fact that nobody went to see it. Currently, it's estimated that the film had to make around 800 million, and that would recoup the investment, marketing, and critics are saying that, considering the cost of making the film and the fact that it's supposed to be a springboard for the new Justice League films, it would have to make around $1 billion at least worldwide box office to be considered a success by Warner Brothers. As of yesterday, it's currently done 827 million worldwide. So, considering it's in its fourth week now, it's not going to make the billion. So, Warner Brothers have already made a few concessions to that. They've tightened the belt on some of their newer projects. They're concentrating on some of the DC films like Justice League Part 1 and 2. The Batman solo film has just been announced. Wonder Woman is obviously having a solo film that's coming out. That's in production. And then probably what will happen is, I'm assuming at one point or another they're going to release solo films for Aquaman and Cyborg. God, I hope not. That would be a bad one. But The Flash 2, that might get another solo film, although it's doing incredibly well on its television series at the moment. They're not merging the two sets of universes, so your film Flash is totally separate from your TV Flash, which is unfortunate because I actually quite like the TV Flash. It's good. But yeah, so they've got these films already listed, already announced that they're going to make, but they're not obviously happy with what Batman v Superman did at the box office. Understandably, they were probably hoping for something along the lines of what the Avengers and Captain America and Age of Ultron they have done for Marvel, but it's just not working for DC. I don't honestly know what. I mean, the feel of their films, as has been said in many places, they're darker, moodier, grittier, perhaps you could say. But they're not bad films, really. I mean, Man of Steel which was the first film Warner Brothers released in this new DC universe, which was supposed to be launched in this new DC universe, Man of Steel Superman. It was pretty good. I liked it. I thought it was a really good Superman film, one of the best we've seen since the first Christopher Reeves one. But it didn't do well with the critics, and fans seem to be about 50-50. And then they go straight into this Batman v Superman, which the problem is, if they'd have kept it just Batman versus Superman, it would have probably, I feel, it would have probably done a lot better. They could have got away with having Batman vs Superman and introduced Wonder Woman. That would have worked, maybe. But then they had to slip in a mention for all the other Justice League characters that are going to come in to the new Justice League films they're currently filming right now. And that was rather sloppily done. That wasn't really very well done at all. And I don't think they really needed to. Personally, if I'd have been DC, I would have said, look, let's just, we might be accused of copying Marvel, but hey, it worked for Marvel. It's worked fantastically for Marvel. They've made a lot of money over doing things this way. So let's release solo films for our Justice League guys. So you would get Batman, you get Superman, you'd get Aquaman, you get Wonder Woman, you get the Flash. You introduce all of these people in standalone films, a lot like Marvel did with Iron Man, the Hulk, Thor, Captain America. All had individual films before we even got to the Avengers. But by the time you got to the Avengers, you knew these guys. You had a connection with them. But DC decided, nope, we've done our Superman film. Our next film is going to be Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. So they're just trying to play catch up, and I don't think it's working for them. I really don't. But a lot of people have laid the blame at the foot of Jack Snyder. Jack Snyder, the director. He's a good director. I mean, as I say, he's done some really good ones. He's done films like 300. That was a good film. Different, but the visuals were fantastic. He did Watchmen, which is another one of those like it or hate it sort of films. I like it. I think it's a fantastic film, but that had mixed reviews. But he's also done some rather terrible ones like Sucker Punch. Anyone remember that one? Yeah, that was pretty dire. I don't know. I mean, I think he would have been alright, but I think he tried to put too much in it. Now, whether that was his fault, whether that was Warner Brothers saying, look, Zach, we need you to incorporate all of this into your film because we have to get up there with Marvel. I don't know. It could have been down to the script. It could have been a lot of things, but the editing really was terrible. I mean, there are certain scenes. I mean, two scenes. These are spoilers, so I'm sorry if you haven't seen the film yet. It's been out for 4 weeks. Odds are you're probably not going to, unless it comes out on DVD. So these are spoilers. Be warned. But there are two sections of the film which underline the problem with the editing straight off the bat. The first one is Lex Luthor gets permission to get access to the crashed Kryptonian spaceship, the one that General Zod flew at the end of Man of Steel, which crashed. But Lex gets permission from the government to access the ship. So you see him getting permission. Next thing you see him walking through security, walking onto the ship with his briefcase. Okay, and then the film cuts away, and you don't see anything more to do with that for about half of the film. And then it cuts back to that scene, and you see that in the briefcase he's got what he's done is he's used a very small piece of Kryptonian to slice the fingerprints off of General Zod, who was in the morgue, so he could use that to get through the security on the Kryptonian ship and get the Kryptonian ship to obey his commands. So that's what's in the suitcase. So he gets on board this ship, he uses these to access the computer on the Kryptonian ship, and he creates this monster. But there's a half a film gap between when you see him walk onto the ship with the briefcase, and when you find out why he was on the ship, what he was doing on the ship with the briefcase. I mean, it's just convoluted, and it takes you out of the film. You don't know what's happening here. You know, why cut away? Why not just do the whole scene? It wouldn't have made any difference to the film. It would have just meant that this creature was going to take longer to create than like the 15-20 minutes that I actually did on film. So that's one. Two, and possibly the most jarring one, is at the end of the film. Superman has died, and they're holding funerals for him. There's a huge hero's funeral in Washington DC, but back in Smallville, they're having a funeral for Clark, who has also obviously died. And during the funeral, towards the end of the funeral, you've built up this amount of emotion from the scene. It's a great scene. But then suddenly, jarringly, it cuts away, and you find yourself with Lex Luthor in his jail cell being visited by Batman. That's a little bit confusing because you've just seen Bruce Wayne in Smallville at the funeral. So, okay, you think, okay, so time's passed, Bruce has left Smallville, and he's gone to see Lex in his jail cell. Fine. But then, as soon as Batman leaves, the scene cuts right back to the funeral. So once again, you're back in Smallville with Bruce Wayne at the grave of Clark Kent. It's like, why would you ruin the funeral scene? Why would you cut away when you've built up all this emotion for the funeral to show us the Batman scene with Lex Luthor, and then come back, finish the grave scene, get that done, then cut to Batman visiting Lex Luthor? You see what I mean? It just doesn't make sense, and there's no excuse for it. There really is no excuse at all. Another problem is Batman is everyone who's seen the film, critics, even though they've panned it, fans who haven't liked it, but everyone who's seen it has said that it's a fantastic Batman, that Ben Affleck does a fantastic job, and he does. There's no getting around it. He is the standout of the entire film. It's a very brutal Batman. It's one we've never seen before. You actually see him killing people with guns and breaking necks and that sort of thing. And Batman in the comic books and in previous movies has never done that. I mean, let's face it, the Joker has given him more than enough reason to kill him, but he never does. He just arrests him and sends him back to the Arkham Sanitarium. But in this film, it's sort of put forward that he's a retired Batman, he's an older Batman. You see, at one point in the film, you see Robin's uniform in a case in the Batcave, and the Joker has written on it the joke's on you, Batman. So that obviously references the death of Robin, which is probably the reason why Batman hung up his cape. But after the Man of Steel and after the destruction wrought upon Metropolis at the end of that film, at the beginning of Batman vs Superman, Bruce Wayne, you find out, was actually in Metropolis at the time, and he sees his building collapse with his people inside it and one of his friends. And that's the instigation of why he wants to bring down Batman. He thinks this alien is too powerful to be allowed to just roam free when he could destroy the entire Earth. So that's the start of it. That's where Batman's reasons for fighting Superman come from. But yeah, unfortunately, Batman sort of takes over the entire film. Superman gets a bit of a bum deal. Although he was obviously had his own film, Man of Steel, we've seen that was all Superman. This one is Batman v Superman. And to be fair, we've seen a lot of Batman, more of Batman than we've ever seen of Superman in the past, with the Chris Nolan films trilogy that we had with Christian Bale, which were fantastic. So we've seen a lot of Batman in the past, but none of it is canon. None of it is part of this universe. So what we're seeing in Batman versus Superman, that Batman is a brand new Batman. Everything that went before doesn't exist. So it gives them free reign going forward. But even so, Superman in this film, he gets some pretty crap lines. It's some pretty crap writing, and he is overshadowed by Batman, and even to a degree, at the end, when you have the Trinity of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman fighting Doomsday, it even gets a little bit overshadowed there by Wonder Woman, of all people. I mean, she's getting her own film in the next few months anyway, but even so, he really does get overshadowed in that. Other bad points for the film: there are at least 3 to 4 dream sequences, which are really weird, and some of them are really quite long. And again, they take you out of the film. So you're trying to, when you watch a film, you build up an emotion for it. You build up connections with the characters as it goes on. But these dream sequences just sort of like take you out of reality for 5 minutes or however long they are, and then they shove you straight back in again. And I understand why they did them for a couple of them. But I don't know, it seems like this film, they've tried to shove so much into it. It's 2.5 hours, just over 2.5 hours long anyway. But it was actually a 3-hour film, and they told Zack Snyder he had to cut about half hour out. Now Zack's now saying, well, when I release the Blu-ray, you'll get the other half hour and it'll all make sense. My argument to that is, you're an experienced, famous director, Zack. You should be able to cut half an hour out of your film and still make it a flowing, understandable film for people to watch and enjoy. If you can't do that, and you didn't, then, perhaps you should relook at things. But anyway, the dream sequences, bad. Lois Lane becomes, unfortunately, just the damsel in distress in this film. I think Superman has to rush off and save her at least 3 times. One of which, at the very end, he goes off and saves her when he's fighting Doomsday. And he leaves Batman and Wonder Woman hanging there while he rushes off to save Lois. I mean, he has to in the end. You'll find out why, but Lois is in possession of something that he needs to kill the bad guy. But none of that, when you're watching it in the film, you're thinking, you're just going to leave Batman and Wonder Woman to hang with this thing that they're having trouble beating, and you're just going to fly off and save your girlfriend? Yeah, okay, well, whatever. But yeah, 3 times he has to save her, so that gets a bit boring in the end. As I say, the intro to the other Justice League characters were basically done by like an email sort of thing, a file that Batman steals off of Lex Luthor's central computer at his offices or his house. I think it's his house. And it has basically files and videos of the other Justice League, so Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman, Wonder Woman. And it has all these files on them. And you get introduced to them by Batman, who originally has this file, clicking on just Wonder Woman. So he's in his Batcave, he's finally decrypted Lex's file, and he's got all these files laid out, and the film shows you clicking on just one, Wonder Woman. So he clicks on it, and he sees a photo of Diana Prince back in 1918, during the First World War. And then you don't see that email again until he forwards it, or he forwards the file, to Wonder Woman. And she clicks on all the other 3 buttons for you, so you get a brief glimpse of a video camera, of security camera of the Flash. You get a brief look at Aquaman coming out of this wrecked ship on the ocean floor, and you get a look at the creation of Cyborg. But that's it. And like I said before, you really don't need it. I think they could have done without that entirely, taken that aspect out of the film entirely. Put it in perhaps at the beginning of Justice League. I don't know. Pardon me, but it just doesn't flow. It doesn't feel right. I don't know. It didn't feel natural. It didn't feel good for me. And then we get to the main huge problem. The film is Batman versus Superman. Yes, okay, they're tagged on Dawn of Justice at the bottom, but regardless, it's Batman versus Superman. That's what got bums on seats. That's what got people excited. They wanted to see these 2 superheroes that they've followed and read about for years fighting. And when it comes down to it, the fight lasts just over 5 minutes, possibly 10 minutes, maybe. But this is a 2.5 hour film, you've got to understand. And this is the main event. And you get these 2 fighting, and although the film tries to build up the animosity between them, the differences between why Bruce has this problem with Superman, and why Superman has this problem with Bruce. I mean, Superman's saying, well, Batman's just a vigilante. He's out killing people and hurting people, and Batman's like, well, hey, you're Superman, you're going around doing whatever the hell you want as well, so why am I wrong and you're right? So all the way through the film, they're building this up. But what actually sparks the fight is Lex Luthor kidnaps Martha, Superman's mum, holds her hostage, and says to Superman, you go and kill Batman and bring me his head, or I'm going to kill your mum. That's it. That's it. That's what sparks this off. Superman's like, well, okay. So he flies off to find Batman. And although, to be fair, he does initially for like 2 or 3 seconds say to Batman, look, wait, don't attack me. I want to talk to you about this. I want your help. Batman's not listening. So they get into the fight. And the fight ends with Superman on his back and Batman standing over him with a spear tipped with Kryptonian, about to ram it into Superman's chest. Yes, Batman wins. For all those people who wondered who would actually win out of that fight, Batman won. And is just about to kill Superman, and Superman looks up at him and says, save Martha. And Batman says, why did you say that? Why did you say that name? Because Martha, by complete coincidence, happens to be his mother's name. Remember, Batman's parents got killed in the alley by the guy with the gun when he was a kid? Yeah, his mum's name is Martha. Wow, huge coincidence. So he like stumbles back and he's like, why are you calling that name? Why are you, he's going a little bit nutty in the head here. And at this point, Lois comes running in and says, that's his mum's name. And Superman gets up and Batman's standing there and he throws the spear away and they have a bit of a chat. Lasts about 2 or 3 minutes, and then all of a sudden Batman's like, okay, I'm going to go and save Martha, you go and take out Lex. So within the course of 3 or 4 minutes, he goes from about to ram this spear through his chest to saying, hey guys, let's be buddies about this. I'll go save your mum, you help me out too. All because Superman calls out the name of Martha. Now, I don't know, this might just be me, but if I'm laying on my back about to die, I wouldn't call out my mum's name, I would say, save my mother. Or something along those lines. That would be a normal human reaction. Okay, fair enough, Superman's not human, but you know what I mean, yeah? You wouldn't be laying on your back shouting at your mum's real name, you'd be saying, save my mother, or something along those lines. But no, in this case, Superman shouts out, Martha. And that's been a bit of a point of contention since that scene. So that's been another reason why Batman's had some rather dodgy reviews, and critics have been talking it down. And you have to admit, it is a bit weird. I mean, they do spend a lot of the film hammering it home to the audience that Batman's mother's name is Martha. You see it, I think it's like 3 or 4 times, right at the very beginning of the film, where his parents are being buried. And then he has a dream sequence where he's visiting his mum's grave. And then you see his dad, who up until now, every time I've seen the origin story of Batman before, Dad's the first one to die. He gets shot, he's dead. But in this, he gets shot, he falls, Mum gets shot, she falls, and then Dad rolls over and says Martha to her just before she dies. So you see that several times as well. So like 3 or 4 times during this film where you see Batman's mum, or reference to Batman's mum and her name. So it's really hammered home, so that when you get to the end of the film, and Superman says, save Martha, it rings true for you. But it's just, it's just not weird. But anyway, enough of the bad points. Good points. The Batcave has had a major upgrade. I mean, it's like a penthouse suite. Yes, it's still underground, but it's like glass and steel and concrete. It's very cool now. Very upgraded, very nice. The Batmobile, see, that thing's kicked ass in every film, but this time it's pretty much indestructible. It has rockets fired at it, things fall on it, it goes driving through walls, through boats, it goes flying off of low buildings and through the back of trucks. I mean, this thing is like indestructible. It's got machine guns on it, it's got rocket, you name it, this thing is there. The only thing that actually damages it is when it runs into Superman. Oddly enough, and that puts a dent in it. But other than that, it's a pretty shit hot piece of kit. I have to admit, I wouldn't mind seeing one of those. Batman's fight scenes, you would have seen them in the trailers if you've seen any of the trailers. If you've seen the film, you know already. But they are very brutal, very nicely choreographed and very effective. But they are brutal. You see him, like I say, breaking people's necks, arms, legs, using guns to kill people. They're fantastic fight scenes. They really are fantastically done. So I've got to give them that. The Batman vs Superman fight, as I say, although it is short, it is good. I mean, how Batman actually does defeat Superman makes sense. It's perfectly logical. So yeah, I mean that's a good fight scene. It's a great fight scene. It should have gone on longer, but hey, it's a good fight scene. We like that. Wonder Woman is great entrance for Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot was one of those people that nobody really knew what to expect. She's not really an actress. She hasn't been in much. I think she was a model before she got into acting. And everyone was like, why would you cast this unknown person to be Wonder Woman? But she does look like Wonder Woman, and the fight scene at the end when her, Superman and Batman are fighting Doomsday is fantastic. She really, it really is very impressive. The only downside would be perhaps you see her a couple of times at a party held by Lex, where Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne are, but Diana Prince is there as well, and you see her there and she's talking to Bruce Wayne, and some of the lines she delivers, there's not many lines, but a few of them are kind of flat, rather bland. So we'll have to see how she comes out in the actual solo standalone Wonder Woman. Whether she'll be any better in that. I'm kind of hoping she will, because like I say, the fight scenes are fantastic and she certainly has the look. I mean, she's a gorgeous lady, you know, obviously there's no problem doing the athletic stuff. She's perfectly fine with that. So yeah, let's hope that Wonder Woman actually turns out to be a great film. I think that's pretty much about it. I mean, the only other downside quickly would be Aaron Eisenberg as Lex. It's not a very good Lex Luthor. I mean, there's a rumour going around that when he initially auditioned, he was auditioning for the Riddler, and he got given the part of Lex, and the Riddler didn't make it into this film. But you can understand watching him on screen where he was coming from. It is a very Riddler-esque sort of persona that he puts on for Lex. You know, he's not all there. A little bit weird, way playing out of left field here, and he just comes over as crazy all the way through it. I mean, Lex is supposed to be a genius, sort of like billionaire, like basically the anti-Bruce Wayne to Superman, but he comes across just nutty, and it doesn't sell it. It's not a good Lex Luthor, I'm afraid, and as is the villain of the piece, it does hurt the film. But that's about it, really. I mean, other than that, as I say, Aaron Eisenberg doesn't really come over very well at all as Lex. Henry Cavill is fantastic again as Superman. He obviously really enjoys the role. Ben Affleck, as I've already said, fantastic Batman, absolutely fantastic. Can't wait for his standalone Batman film, which he's supposedly writing and possibly even directing. So that could be fun. But also Jeremy Irons as Alfred. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. We've never seen an Alfred quite like this. He's a little bit younger than perhaps the other portrayals, Michael Caine in the Chris Nolan films, and obviously the previous Batman films with the older Alfred. This one, not quite as old, slightly more involved in Batman's crime fighting. You see him fixing stuff and building and mending equipment for Batman. And at one point, as you see in the trailers, you see him remotely flying the Batwing so Batman can get off and into one of the buildings where the bad guys are. So yeah, I mean, Jeremy Irons is fantastic as Alfred, and once again, that'll be fun to see more of him in the new Batman film. So can't wait to see that. Like I say, the film is enjoyable to watch. It's a long film. It didn't have to be 2.5 hours. It certainly doesn't need to be 3 hours. And Zack Snyder should have been able to cut it down to make it an easily smoother, more watchable, more fun film. But it's okay. you know, it's not a terrible film. It's not the worst I've ever seen. You know, it's just not the blockbuster that Warner Brothers needed it to be. And now they're going up against Marvel, and Marvel are just firing hit after hit after hit. I mean, they can do no wrong at the moment. Every film they've released has been a success, going from the very first Iron Man all the way up to we had the Age of Ultron not too long ago, and now we've just had, or coming out in the next week or two, Captain America Civil War, which looks like it's going to be another fantastic movie. So yeah, they can do no wrong. So DC really are at the moment, they're just really having trouble getting this DC universe launched and making it successful. We'll just have to wait and see how Wonder Woman comes out. But until then, that'll be it for this review. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it didn't bore anyone too much. You people take care, and let's be careful out there. See you later.